Well, Omicron has dented the plans of a lot of employers and organisations to bring people back to the office in 2022. And with ongoing uncertainty about the next few weeks and months and, of course, what's going to happen later in the year, employers are at a loss as to how to best engage with their people as we come to 2 years of being within this pandemic. Here to tell us his thoughts, Joydeep Hall from People and Culture Strategies joins us back on the program. Joydeep, great to go and see you there. For uncertainty, I wouldn't want to be running a business right now given how difficult it is. What are some of the challenges that you're coming across from your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon. It is really uncertainty. That's the best way to describe what's happening. I think the environment towards the second half of last year was so much more positive. There was a sense that the hard work for employers was in getting their staff vaccinated, but that was very much seen as the pathway to giving employers a little bit more control over their own destiny when it came to matters such as how their employees would be working, where they'd be working from, etc. And Omicron has just thrown a massive spanner in the works. And I think for a lot of employers, what I'm hearing is that there is a sense of frustration. There is a sense of, as the general public is of course feeling, is this going to end? When is this going to end? Are we just really going to go from one variant to another? And from a business point of view and an employer point of view, are we losing control of our own shop? Are we really now in no position to be, in spite of whatever the planning and thought might have been that's gone into all different types of working and contingencies, is it really outside of our control now? And are we very much at the behest of the virus and different iterations of it? So it's a really tough time for everyone. And I apprehend that this is going to be one of the most challenging years for employers in terms of keeping their employees engaged and keeping themselves relevant.
Isolation periods. The rules have been changing left, right and centre at the moment. I can imagine that would be a real challenge because in a service-facing where you've got limited staff numbers, when you've got a lot of your staff off, that of course makes it very difficult to go and open your doors.
Well, the business impact on the chopping and changing, while in fairness, a lot of it is intended to minimise and mitigate the impact on employers and the staffing challenges that they're having, that the reality is keeping up to date with the variations in the rules and the requirements is something that a lot of employers are challenged by. And a lot of employers have made the decision, as I'm sure you and viewers would be aware, have just made the decision to shut up shop for a while, or at least go back to skeleton staff or reduced hours and reduced service mechanisms and facilities, none of which is great and none of which is what I think employers were expecting would be the case in January 22.
Joydeep, looking around here at Barangaroo, I can tell you there's not a lot of people around. In fact, it's very eerie on the streets at almost all hours of the day. A lot of organisations are switching to doing A and B teams, so having some of their staff at the office, some at home. Does that just make that entrenchment of that hybrid workplace something that's going to be around forever now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think what we were having discussions with our clients in relation to in the second half of last year, where a lot of them were wanting advice and guidance in relation to hybrid working. A lot of them probably had accepted that a 3 to 4 days in the office / workspace and 1 to 2 days working from home or working from a different location was the way they were going to go. But there were a lot of clients, I must say, and a lot of organisations who still remained of the view that the impact and the negative impact on collaboration, team harmony, learning opportunities, all of that was just too great if they continued to allow or facilitate people working from home or away from their usual place of work too much. But you're absolutely right. If you look around in Sydney at the moment, and I'm sure this is the case around the country, the default position seems to be, at least for the next few weeks for many organisations, that their workforces are going to largely be staying at home. And it does get to a point, as we've now approached that 2-year mark, of has this just become the way that people will work? Not necessarily because employers have accepted it and encouraged it, but just because that has become the default through external circumstances.
There is one silver lining for me, though. I can get my lunch very quickly at the moment, which is making me a little bit more happy, but certainly I wish it was a little bit more busier around here, that's for sure. I want to go and ask you about vaccine mandates. Now, we've had most Australians, 95% or so, have gone and had their second shot. Now it's about boosters. But people are saying, well, boosters don't go and prevent you getting the actual virus. So How does that stand when it comes to an employer? Can they go and mandate to go and get their staff vaccinated with that booster as well now?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing and having conversations with clients about is many of whom have introduced mandatory vaccinations policies, which at the time that they were introduced in August, September last year, which is really when there was the impetus for organisations to do that. It was limited to the 2 doses, so the double vaccinated requirement or double vaccination requirement. Now, of course, those policies are being amended to reflect the booster for now, but with noise about maybe possibly a 4th dose being required, and perhaps the sense that it's just you just need to keep dosing up. Employers are probably going to be asking themselves the question of, do we just keep it open-ended? So rather than specifying the number, it's kind of got to be, well, whatever is the health advice. But again, at some point, as you say, if even with triple vaccination, it's not stopping people from getting the virus, the question that's going to be asked is, was all of the heartache and the debate and the consternation and battles with our workforce about them being vaccinated worth it? If the end point is even people doing all of that are still contracting the virus, still unable to come to work, still having to isolate, all of that, what's the point? And I do see that is the sentiment amongst a lot of employers as they struggle to keep up with this ever-changing and unpleasant, one would have to say, external environment.
Yeah, can of worms at the moment. It's a really difficult space. We'll see how that goes and plays out. Joy Deep, today we got the Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Sentiment Survey. They're going to ask how people feel about their job security. And whilst it deteriorated a little bit during the course of the month, it's still pretty strong relative to history. What are you hearing from employers' side of the equation at the moment? How are they feeling amidst all this?
Yeah, so I think throughout the course of last year, there was a lot of discussion coming out of the US around this concept or phrase around the Great Resignation, or this idea that people are going to be leaving their current jobs in droves and exploring other opportunities. And I think there's certainly been anecdotal evidence in the US, UK, and even here that the number of employees who are looking at alternative career paths or just fed up with their current roles has increased, and there's no question about that. I think it's completely understandable that as time goes on in this particular situation where, there are so many things that people have not been able to do for the better part of 2 years now, and overseas travel, while yes, of course it can happen in certain ways, shapes and forms at the moment, but everyone knows that it's nowhere near what it was 2 years ago, as an example. But lockdowns, isolations, all of those kinds of things have made an unprecedented impact on people's lives. It's not surprising in that context that employees will be looking to make changes in those aspects of their life that they can make changes in. And the low-hanging fruit for a lot of people is a career change, because that is something that allows a person, rightly or wrongly, to start afresh, deal with a new organisation, a new group of people, a new manager, new career opportunities, new challenges, all of those kinds of things, which is all of a sudden a lot more appealing in an environment where the circuit breakers that would otherwise exist throughout the course of your career and your working week, month, year are just not there in the same way. So employee sentiment at the moment is challenged. Employees are tired. Employees are jaded. Employers are frustrated. There's no one winning out of all of this. Employers have expressed in many circles that it's really hard to hire people. It's really hard to retain people. So this is why I said at the top of this discussion that I apprehend that 2022 is going to be one of the most difficult years for employers when it comes to engagement with their staff.